Who am I speaking with?
My name is Russell Faria.
Russell, what's going on there?
I just got home from a friend's house, and my wife, she's on the floor.
I need you to take a couple deep breaths so I can see what's going on. Is she breathing at all?
On August 16, 2016, Louis Gumpenberger opened his door to find a Dateline producer standing there. She had a proposition for Lou. Help me reenact a 911 call, and I'll pay you $1,000. To Lou, it sounded like some quick, easy cash, so he accepted. The producer then drove Lou 13 miles to her home in O'Fallon, Missouri. While we can't be sure what played out inside her home, we can guess that she most likely told Lou that she would actually call 911 to make the reenactment seem more real. When the 911 operator picked up, the woman began reporting an active home invasion.
911, where's your emergency?
Hey, hello, there's someone breaking in my house. Help!
What's
Help.
the address you're at?
Help!
Want me to get your wife?
No, I'm not getting in the car with you. No,
What's
get
your
away.
address?
Get out, get out, get out. Help!
Ma'am, what's the address you're at?
Help! Help!
I have somebody breaking in.
No!
Hello?
Help! Help!
Ma'am, can you hear me?
Help!
What's the address you're at?
Hello! Who is
Are
it?
you there?
Yes, I am.
Where are you at?
I have an intruder in my house.
Where are you at?
Yes.
Who broke into your home?
No, I'm in here.
Where's he at right
I'm
now?
outside. I'm going outside. Come on, who's it?
The fire alarms are going off too.
Hello?
Is he inside?
Yes.
Is he a white male, a black male?
He's crazy. He tried to get me in my car and I ran into the
He
house.
tried to take you into his car?
He tried to take me in my car.
Have officers on the way, ma'am. Where are you at right now in the home?
I'm in the garage.
You're in the garage?
My car. He's still in the house.
You have no idea who the subject is?
No.
Are there any weapons in the home?
Yes, there's a gun on my bed. I shot him.
There's a gun on your bed? You shot him?
Yes, I shot him. He tried to get in my bedroom after me, and I shot him.
When officers arrived, they found Lou dead in the woman's hallway from multiple gunshot wounds. When they checked his pocket, they found $900 in cash and a handwritten note with instructions that read, "Kidnap Hupp and get Russ's money." Louis Gumpenberger, who went by Lou, was born on February 17, 1983, in Sullivan County, Missouri, to Margaret Birch and Michael Kenneth Gumpenberger. He went on to have 2 children with his longtime partner, Shannon Zoll, and was described as a devoted father. He loved being around his kids, and especially enjoyed watching them train in martial arts. Unfortunately, in 2005, when Lou was 22 years old, he was driving at high speeds while intoxicated and drove into oncoming traffic. He survived the crash, but suffered a traumatic brain injury that left him with significant physical and mental impairments. He had severe nerve damage on the left side of his body, causing him to walk with a permanent limp and a hunched posture that resembled cerebral palsy. His cognitive capacity was also reduced to that of a 10-year-old. Because he couldn't drive and required significant assistance, he was forced to live with his mother and rarely left the home alone. This also explains why he rode with the woman to her home instead of driving himself. Regardless of his disability, Lou remained a devoted father, often using the weekly paychecks he earned from working at BCI Packaging to buy toys for his sons. As for the woman who claimed to be a Dateline producer, she was no producer at all and didn't even work for NBC. Her name was Pam Hupp, and she just murdered an innocent man. The reason why dates back to 2011, when 42-year-old Betsy Faria, a mother of 2 battling terminal breast cancer, was found murdered after being driven home by none other than Hupp. Betsy and Hupp had met in 2001 when they both worked as administrators at a State Farm insurance office. Betsy, who was 11 years younger than Hupp, was the one who actually trained her when she first started. They worked together for a couple of years and became friends, but eventually drifted apart. In 2010, after learning Betsy had been diagnosed with terminal breast cancer, Hupp swooped in to help. She became a constant presence in Betsy's life, frequently driving her to chemotherapy treatments and acting as a close confidant. Then, 5 days before Betsy's murder, she named Hupp as the sole beneficiary of her $150,000 life insurance policy, claiming she feared her husband Russ would blow through it all. Hupp promised to give the money to Betsy's daughters, but she never did. On the day of Betsy's murder, on December 27, 2011, her friend Bobby Wan drove her to the Alvin J. Siteman Cancer Center in St. Louis, Missouri, for her chemotherapy treatment, and then returned to her mother, Janet Meyer's home in Lake St. Louis, where she had been staying. Her husband, Russ, planned to pick her up after his weekly game night, but Hupp unexpectedly showed up and insisted on driving her home to Troy. Betsy agreed and sent Russ a text, informing him that Hupp was bringing her home early so she could go to bed, because she didn't get much sleep due to her mother's snoring. After leaving at around 6:30 p.m., Janet never saw her daughter alive again. Hupp claimed she dropped Betsy off at her home on Sumac Drive at 7 p.m. 20 minutes later, she sent a text to Betsy's phone that simply read, "Home," implying she had safely reached her own house. What actually occurred was that Hupp helped Betsy inside to her couch and then stabbed her to death. The attack was brutal, to say the least, and in total, there were 55 stab wounds. She then removed Betsy's socks and used them to spread blood throughout the house to simulate a domestic struggle. She then put the socks back on Betsy's feet. Meanwhile, Russ was 20 miles away at a friend's house for their weekly game night, a fact confirmed by cell phone pings and a receipt from Arby's at 9:06 p.m. When he arrived home at 9:40 p.m., he discovered Betsy's body, leading to a frantic 911 call.
Who am I speaking with?
My name is Russell Faria.
Russell, what's going on there?
I just got home from a friend's house, and my wife killed herself. She's on the floor.
I need you to take a couple deep breaths so I can see what's going on. Is she breathing at all?
No.
She is not breathing?
No, come on.
Russell, they're on the way, hon, okay? They'll be there shortly.
Russ assumed because of her terminal illness that she had taken her own life. Because he was in such shock over discovering his wife's body with a knife still in her, he was hysterical, crying out, "Why would she do this to me?" This led investigators, and eventually the prosecutor, to believe his reaction was over the top and staged. The morning after the murder, Hupp put her next plan into action: frame Russ for Betsy's murder, unaware that investigators were already doing a good job of that. They strongly felt that Russ had murdered his wife and were dead set on arresting him. They would even use the controversial theory of voice analysis to claim his distress during the 911 call was fake. 911 call analysis and voice stress analysis are widely considered junk science. People's reactions to finding loved ones dead or murdered vary greatly, and in reality, Russ had acted no differently than anyone else would. The morning after the murder, investigators went to Hupp's home and spoke with her at length.
You describe your friendship as best friends, or?
Betsy had a lot of best friends. But yes, I saw her almost every day, every other day. He's verbally mean to her. He smokes in the house, even though she's been sick, and doesn't care.
Sort of disrespectful.
Oh, he's very disrespectful. He makes comments about how much money he'll have after she's gone because he's got life insurance on her at work. She's got life insurance. Just insensitive stuff, which would upset her. He'd start playing this game of putting a pillow over her face to see what it would feel like. I don't know if she said, "This is what it's going to feel like when you die," or whatever, and then act like he was kidding. She was very upset.
She told them that Betsy had become increasingly fearful of Russ and that he was a heavy drinker with a violent temper. But this was all a lie. She even led police to a forged document on Betsy's computer that echoed these fears. In a bizarre twist, Hupp told investigators she and Betsy had been involved in a sexual relationship.
I replaced what a husband would be. It's honestly a relationship with two women who really aren't attracted to women. I don't know how to explain that. It's not, I'm attracted to men. Love everything about them. Can't wait till Magic Mike XL comes out. But she's the same way. It's not like she was a lesbian or anything. It wasn't like it was such an evolution of emotional trauma for her.
She claimed Betsy had a mad crush on her and that they had been intimate a few times while drinking wine together. She claimed Russ had discovered the affair, and that was his motivation for murder.
Pushed me up against the wall, and he said, never come over here again. He was all red-faced.
Like gritted teeth.
Oh, he's like, talk about this far away from a face? Yeah, he was right there. I could feel his spit. Nasty. And he said, you two muff thumpers, something to that effect. If I ever catch you together again, bury you out in the backyard.
It would later be learned that through Betsy's friend Bobby that Hupp was very homophobic, making her story very unlikely. Bobby also contradicted Hupp by saying that Betsy was deeply in love with Russ. However, these geniuses at the Lincoln County Sheriff's Department, including Michael Merkel, Ryan McCarrick, and Patrick Harney, didn't care and were only out to close the case as quickly as possible. They felt they had their man and were never going to change their mind despite all the contradictory statements Hupp was making. They continued focusing on Russ even after learning that Betsy had made Hupp the sole beneficiary of her $150,000 life insurance policy just 4 days before the murder. They didn't see, or didn't want to see, that was most likely the reason for the murder. Hupp wanted that money, and she wanted it now. They also ignored the fact that Russ had 4 witnesses confirming his alibi. At the end of the interview with Hupp, investigators arrested Russ and charged him with first-degree murder. Surely the prosecutor, Leah Cheney, who was Leah Askey at the time, would pick up on Hupp's strange behavior before and after the murder, but nope, you'd be wrong. She actually used Hupp as her star witness and, along with investigator Merkel, withheld more than 100 crime scene photos from Russ's trial, along with some of the contradictory statements Hupp had made about her own timeline that night. In November 2013, Russ was found guilty of first-degree murder and armed criminal action. He was then sentenced to life, plus 30 years without the possibility of parole. He then spent over 3 years behind bars at the Jefferson City Correction Center. During this time, he continued to maintain his innocence. Betsy's family was also convinced of his guilt, largely due to the false narrative that Hupp had planted. Russ's lawyer, Joel Schwartz, knew his client was innocent and immediately began fighting for a new trial, arguing that critical evidence, such as the 100 crime scene photos and Hupp's contradictory statements, had been improperly suppressed. In November 2015, Russ was granted a bench trial, meaning a judge rather than a jury would decide. For the first time, the defense was allowed to point to Pam Hupp as a viable suspect. They presented cell phone pings that contradicted her timeline and highlighted the $150,000 insurance policy. On November 6, 2015, Judge Stephen Almer found Russ not guilty, citing the disturbing nature of the original investigation and Hupp's suspicious involvement. Despite this, she wasn't immediately investigated for Betsy's murder, and in August 2016, she tried once again to frame Russ, this time for the murder of Lou. Thankfully, the investigators working on Lou's murder were actually good at their job, and a week after the murder, on August 23, 2016, they had dismantled Hupp's self-defense story and arrested her. Before being handcuffed and taken to jail, Hupp asked to use the restroom. It was inside that she pulled out a ballpoint pen and tried to take her own life. She was rushed to the hospital and survived. Ironically, she was charged with the same charges Russ had received, first-degree murder and armed criminal action. They determined that Lou was incapable of being a hired hitman because of his disabilities. They also determined that the paper the note was written on, which was found in Lou's pocket, that read "Get Russ's money," came from a pad inside Hupp's house. Also inside, they found a $100 bill that matched the sequence of numbers on the $900 found in Lou's pocket. Hupp's cell phone was very incriminating because it showed her being at Lou's apartment complex 45 minutes before the shooting, despite her claim that she had never met him. Then investigators got a huge break in the case when an officer at St. Charles County called and said he had a lady named Carol Alford that investigators should definitely speak with. During the interview with her, she told a story about being approached by a woman claiming to be a Dateline producer.
She's like, I'd like to offer you the opportunity to record a soundbite for Dateline for $1,000 cash. Should I have gotten the car? No, I'll admit that.
But before Hupp could pull away, Carol got cold feet and said she needed to run inside and grab a different pair of shoes.
Crap, I said, I forgot my shoes that I wanted to get. And she's like, oh, well, you don't need your shoes. I was like, lady, I left my door unlocked. I gotta go lock my door. She's sitting in my driveway. I wanted to make sure I got her license plate, her vehicle fully on my security cameras because I don't know if somebody's gonna kidnap. Like, I'm sorry, I really can't help you. My son just called me. She leans out of the car a little bit and she's talking to me. She says, you have cameras, and jerks her head back in the car. I said, yes, I have a knife and know how to dial 911. You need to leave. And I walked to my house and she didn't waste no time leaving. It's just crazy.
One last piece of evidence was a carpet swatch that she had placed on the floor where she shot Lou. Investigators believe she put it there to protect the floor underneath from Lou's blood. In 2019, Pam Hupp entered an Alford plea, meaning she didn't have to admit to the crime. She was then sentenced to life in prison. Following her conviction, the Lincoln County prosecuting attorney Mike Wood formally reopened Betsy's murder case. On July 12, 2021, Hupp was officially charged with first-degree murder in connection with Betsy's death. In a strategic move, prosecutors briefly dropped her charges in October 2023, which were filed in Springfield, and then immediately refiled them in Lincoln County. This was done to prevent witnesses and family members from having to travel over 200 miles to attend her upcoming trial, which is currently scheduled for August 3, 2026. There's also one more death Hupp's suspected of being involved in. On Halloween Day 2013, Pam Hupp went to visit her 77-year-old mother, Shirley Newman, at Lakeview Park, a retirement living facility in Fenton, Missouri. She told the staff that her mother would not be coming down for dinner or breakfast in the morning. The following afternoon, Shirley was found dead in the grass below her third-floor balcony. Because of the damage to the balcony, investigators suspected she had accidentally fallen. However, Dateline NBC spoke with a structural engineer who proved it would take at least 2,000 pounds of force to break the spindles on the railing. He said there is zero chance Shirley's fall was an accident. Shirley was also found with 14 times the recommended dosage of zolpidem, aka Ambien. It's theorized that Hupp murdered her mother to receive her $500,000 life insurance policy. She had even told a detective months earlier that she didn't need to kill Betsy because she would get her mother's money when she died. While Shirley's death was later changed from accidental to undetermined, Hupp has never been charged in connection with it. As for Russ, he filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the county and Merkel, McCarrick, Harney, and Cheney. In March of 2020, a $2 million settlement was reached and paid out by the Lincoln County Sheriff's Department's insurance company. In June of 2025, former investigator Sheriff Captain Michael Merkel was charged with 2 felony counts of perjury. These charges were based on his testimony during Russ's trial, where he lied under oath, claiming that more than 100 crime scene photos were never developed or were lost to a camera malfunction. Russ's defense team found the photos and quickly realized why they were hidden. They contained zero evidence pointing to Russ as the killer. It was clear that Merkel, along with the other 2 investigators and the prosecutor, was purposefully trying to convict an innocent man. Not because they want to protect Hupp, but because they wanted to close the case and further their careers. When Merkel was taken into custody on June 10, 2025, Russ was present in the courtroom to watch him be handcuffed, the same way that had been done to Russ years earlier. In addition to perjury, Merkel was also charged in 2022 with stalking and harassing the detective who was leading the internal misconduct investigation into his team. It's believed he tried to intimidate the investigator into stopping the inquiry into him and former prosecutor Leah Cheney. In early 2026, major drama erupted when Cheney tried to serve as Merkel's defense lawyer. A judge disqualified her from the case, ruling it was a conflict of interest, since she was also the subject of the very investigation that led to Merkel's arrest. Then the former captain's wife, Becky Merkel, was also arrested and charged with first-degree harassment and second-degree stalking. She allegedly worked with her husband and brother-in-law to threaten the same law enforcement officer involved in the misconduct probe. Michael Merkel's brother, Kevin, who was a former DEA agent, was also arrested and charged with harassment and stalking. They allege he used a burner phone app on his government-issued device to send an anonymous, threatening message to the investigator looking into Betsy's case. As for Ryan McCarrick and Patrick Harney, who were named in the civil suit for ignoring evidence, they've not faced any criminal charges. Ryan left the sheriff's office years ago and now works for the Florissant Police Department in St. Louis County. Patrick remained with the department until around the time Betsy's murder case was reopened. As of today, Pamela Hupp remains incarcerated, serving a life sentence, and her prosecutor, Michael Wood, had this to say about the investigation, and I quote, "This is one of the poorest examples of investigative work that I, as well as my team, have ever encountered, driven largely by ego, working toward an agenda rather than truth."